Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Taxi! Okay, man, we're looking around. This is the 77 WABC minicast.
The big winner is President Donald Trump. There were a whole bunch of primaries that took place, some yet to be called. But so far, the Trump-backed candidates are doing very, very well and defeating some nemesis of President Trump. And the big one that everybody's talking about is Thomas Massie. He, of course, has been the longtime congressman there from Kentucky, 7 terms, 14 years. And he certainly has been a Trump adversary, even though he's within the GOP. He voted for war powers, essentially trying to put a hamstring on Trump with Iran and Venezuela. Voted against aid to Israel. I would say that's a little bit of a problem. Voted against the big, beautiful bill, which would have been tax cuts for all Americans. We know that finally got through, but he has been a thorn in President Trump's side, in House Republican side. And I think a lot of people tonight are saying, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Good riddance. And the guy who beat him is a guy named Ed Galrine, a real newcomer into politics. And he's an interesting guy. He really just got involved in the race about maybe a few weeks ago, 15 weeks or so ago. But he's a new guy to politics. He's a dairy farmer, a 5th generation dairy farmer. And he's also a very heralded Navy SEAL, 4 Bronze Stars, a whole bunch of other high military acclamations, and highly decorated, very impressive guy, and a no-nonsense guy. And he says, listen, President Trump came to me and he said, I want someone who carries my agenda, but more importantly, who carries the American public's agenda. I was voted in overwhelmingly. This is the agenda. I want someone who's going to live up to the American people's expectations. And that's why Ed Galrine said he got in. And boy, that race was called pretty quickly. I was really surprised because a lot of people were saying, well, it could be fairly tight. It could drag on through the night. But no, Ed Galrine, who got President Trump's endorsement, that changed the race. That was the game changer. And it just goes to show everybody, all you poo-poo people out there who say, oh, well, Donald Trump is old news. It's Trump derangement syndrome. Let me tell you, tonight, this is clearly Donald Trump's Republican Party. He is on a roll. You look at what happened in Indiana. He won all of these primaries with the candidates that he supported. Then over the weekend, you also look at what happened in Louisiana. Bill Cassidy, who he didn't want to win because he voted against President Trump, in fact, voted for his impeachment. Remember, on the second go round, Trump said, you know what, we're going to primary you. He got ousted. And then tonight, so far, Trump has a 100% track record. So I'd say that's pretty darn good, everybody. And I guess the point is, you don't bet against the president of the United States, who is still incredibly, incredibly popular. This Ed Galrine guy came out and said, you know what? I am proud to represent America. I am proud to be endorsed by President Trump. The race was called in less than an hour from when the polls were closed. So that speaks volumes. That was a biggie, 1,000%. And this just shows that President Trump on the ballot, yeah, guess what? He's the punching bag for Democrats because they fear him and they know how incredibly popular he is. And this was an enormous testament tonight to his power. And it is riding high, less than an hour, defeating a guy who has been there in the House in Kentucky for 14 years, knows everybody, well connected, a whole bunch of money. In fact, it was the most expensive House race in U.S. history. So far, this is a stunning amount, $33 million spent just on this primary. That just shows how high the stakes are. And yet, Thomas Massie on the way out, all he did was whine and complain about President Trump, complain about the GOP. It was typical Thomas Massie, because that's why they wanted to boot him out. But here he is just a little bit ago in his, quote, concession speech, and he talked about all the money raised and talked about the fact that it's going to be sayonara for him.
Welcome to the most expensive congressional primary ever in the 250-year history of this country. It's not just the most expensive. This thing went on longer than Vietnam. It started 9 months ago, and they didn't even have a candidate, and they decided they want to take me out. I want to start by thanking the volunteers who have put so much effort into this. Some of you came from all across the country. Some of you are homegrown. I love all of you.
See ya. And guess what? This is what I found really distasteful. I've interviewed Thomas Massie a number of times. I've always, had a good relationship with him. But President Trump said it best today. He said, I don't know if he's a Republican. I don't know if he's a libertarian. I don't know what he is. Because he clearly wasn't looking out for the Republican Party and the Republican Party values. There were a number of things where he was very much against the president. He was one of those guys who said, no, we should be an isolationist. I guess we should never take out a rogue regime that might have a nuclear weapon, or it's on its path clearly to it. For some reason, he thinks it's okay that they stay there. That was what he was saying. And essentially Maduro, we should keep Maduro there, who's running, drug running and terrorism and everything else, and the ties to Russia and everybody else. I guess we should keep him there too. And then he was so against Israel, as I mentioned, which was really disgusting. It was like he was blaming Israel for everything. And in fact, he was blaming Jewish money for undermining his campaign. I guess Jewish Americans are not considered real Americans to Thomas Massie. And this to me is really troubling. I felt this like strain of mundanity in him. And that really bothered me when I heard him say, Israel is here. Israel's doing this. Israel's doing this. Israel's against me. Well, if you're against Israel, you can understand why they and maybe Jewish Americans might be against you, Thomas Massie. So listen to what he said, and this is what everybody is shocked about tonight. Here he is. He's in his concession speech. He's literally minutes after he gets the poll results that he has been battered and he's out. And yet on the way out, he takes a swipe at Israel. Listen to what he says about his competitor who has now clobbered him, Ed Galrine. Ed is, of course, going to go now to the general election. Now, they've won, of course, the primary because it was a handily beaten win there. It was just the two of them. So it doesn't go to a runoff or any of those other things. It goes right now to the general election. And it's probably going to be Ed Galrine who's going to be the next member of Congress, because in that particular seat, Donald Trump won there 75% against Kamala Harris. That is definitely Trump country, Kentucky. They love their bourbon and they love their Trump. And they like the Derby, too. They like a whole bunch of other things, too. But it is clearly, basically his race to lose at this point. It is very unlikely that he would lose. So probably you're going to be talking to Congressman Ed Galrine. But Thomas Massie couldn't be even gracious in defeat. He clearly got clobbered, and he had to take a swipe at Ed Galrine, and he had to take a swipe at the group he guess he hates the most, and that's Israel.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galrine in Tel Aviv. I did get the call through, though. I have called and conceded the race. We've been honorable the whole time, and we're going to stay that way.
Breaking news.
I'm not sure about the honorable part, but we'll get to that in a moment. But here's some more results coming in. Congressman Andy Barr, he is going to be advancing. This is in the big race there in Georgia. This is an important one. This is from Mitch McConnell's seat, the Senate seat, because, of course, Mitch McConnell is retiring. and Congressman Andy Barr, who represents the beautiful city of Lexington, Kentucky. And he was a Trump back guy also as well. This race was like, oh my goodness, the polls closed within 5 minutes. This race was called. Congressman Andy Barr handily beating the non-Trump back candidate, which was the former state attorney general David Cameron. And Trump picked Andy Barr. And boy, did he just trounce him. Some of the latest numbers are showing 64% for Congressman Andy Barr and 28% for David Cameron. The race called literally within minutes. It was called within 5 minutes. So that is a very, very big deal. And again, that is another big Trump-backed win. And then here's another one. President Trump supported Burt Jones. He is the lieutenant general there in Georgia, and he is going to be making it to a runoff. A lot of people weren't sure where he would place or if he would place, whatever. Trump endorsed him, and he skyrocketed. So he will make it to the runoff. And we will see who it looks like right now. It's going to be him and the number two, who it's kind of weird in Georgia. It's like Democrats and Republicans. It's sort of a jungle group, a jungle primary, kind of like they call it elsewhere in California. But what's interesting is that Brad Raffensperger, who is the Georgia Secretary of State, remember famously, who went up against President Trump during all the election stuff and everything else. He was clearly a Trump nemesis. It's like maybe he was on the phone with Thomas Massey every day. I'm just kidding. But the two birds of a feather flock together. But another big Trump win. Not only does Burt Jones, the person he was supporting, go to the runoff, but also Raffensperger, by the way, came in third. So he's not making it to the runoff. So that means that Brad Raffensperger, who has definitely been a Trump nemesis, is out, and the Trump candidate there will continue into the race. That's for the Georgia governor's race. Now, the other big thing today, and this just happened, boy, has this been a busy day. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, who we've talked to here on the show, well, he got a big endorsement from President Trump, and that was a huge one. That is, of course, in the Texas Senate race against John Cornyn, who's been the incumbent there for many, many years. And John Cornyn ran into ire with not just President Trump, but his base over a number of his votes as well. He wasn't like a Thomas Massey, but you could tell President Trump was trying to figure out, should I endorse him? Should I endorse Ken Paxton? Ken Paxton, many people believe, is much closer to MAGA and MAGA values, very much more like President Trump. On the other hand, you got John Cornyn, the incumbent, but it was a very hotly contested race. And it is still going on because the primary for that is next Tuesday. But President Trump said, no, I'm going to make an endorsement. It's interesting because John Cornyn just came out yesterday and he was actually saying that it was his impression that nobody was going to be endorsed in the race, that President Trump was going to kind of stay out of it, which meant good news for John Cornyn, although some people were really pushing, like John Thune, to get Cornyn endorsed. So a lot of people didn't really know who he was going to endorse. You heard a lot of experts in the last few hours say, I don't know. And then a lot of people thought, well, maybe he might stay out of it. But President Trump has decided to endorse Ken Paxton, who has been leading of late in the polls. And in the last 2 or 3 weeks, you look at the trajectory of that race. At one point, he was kind of down quite a bit when he first got in. Everybody thought, oh, he's not going to be able to punch through the numbers that Cornyn had. Then he started escalating. And in the latest numbers, he has been either equal or above John Cornyn, clearly on the rise. And Cornyn has been going down in the numbers. So President Trump sees that. He also knows Ken Paxton very well. And he has now endorsed Ken Paxton for that very important Texas Senate race.
Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
Tuesday, May 19th at 10:30 a.m., it's morning baseball. Wednesday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m., have a pawsome time at Bark in the Park. Thursday, May 21st at 6:30, it's Pride Night with $5 Bud or Bud Light draft beer. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.